speech, you firstly want to consolidate your notes in a way that you can easily refer your paper and give the feedback in a flow. Second thing that you want to do after the speech is when you are saying AOIs, you want to demonstrate how that area can be improved. And the last thing is you always want to mention whether the speech objective was met in the typical Toastmaster project, and if they're asked you to look at anything specific, whether that is done or not. That's for the thank you. Anything else? Yes, Mo.
Sometimes we depends on the speaker. We need to be little sensitive also, right? If you really analyze it and give it, it may hurt also. In that case, better to be avoid and give it personal.
Well, great question. So, two things to look at it, right? Toastmasters in their curriculum nicely define certain things. Like in an icebreaker, you are not to give feedback on things like body language and voice modulation because there's a project after that. The speaker hasn't done it. So it's good to be aware of what level is the speaker at, so that you're giving them feedback only about things that they've covered and they should have covered in their speech. That's number one. The second thing, coming to your sensitivity of the speaker, of course a great element of it is dependent on how you're packaging it. But the other thing that I use, a rule of thumb, is you think, what can the speaker easily implement in their next speech? What's my quick win? In work, we always say that what's my quick win? So what's the quick win for the speaker? I always give the quick win first because that's easy. The speaker can easily implement. And instead of giving 6 points, which then becomes a little bit like, oh my God, he's only criticizing my speech. So I sometimes cut that down and I make it the 2 most relatable points for the speaker from that speech. I'm very certain I'll evaluate the speaker again after 5 speeches, and then I can give them something more rather than giving them all of it. And harsh, like the language is very important. No matter how tenured we are, how open to feedback we are, anything presented to us in a way like you didn't do this never goes down well, no matter who you are. So that's why how you package it then becomes important. But I'm not a fan of sugarcoating. As an evaluator, I never say like, you did this very well. My AOIs will never start with something like, you did this so well, I just feel one minor thing maybe. It's like somehow you're trying to be honest. The speaker will appreciate it. I've done my highlights. I'd go on to say, look, in this area, I feel you could have done this. See, this is what you said, this is what you could have said. And the speaker's immediately like, yeah. So sugarcoating I don't think is required. Questioning yourself as an evaluator, maybe I got this wrong, maybe you should have done this. No, don't question your credibility as an evaluator. Go straight on, but do it politely. Do it respectfully for the speaker. That's it. That should do. Yes, Aparna.
So I have, my challenge is that when you have told reduced face probably and bare and gesture bare. So the bare parts that wherever we have to show it to the speaker, keeping that whatever, that is where I just lose it because I do not know, because the speech is going at certain pace, right? And I do not know how to grab that and put it down into the writing part. I mean, like, the specifically writing. I do not know how to make those pointers so that I don't lose the entire flow of speech.
Amazing question. Thank you, Aparna. A challenge all of us face. So this is how I would go about it. So whenever, let's say it's gesture, right? And you want to talk about a particular gesture that the speaker uses. Somebody puts their hand in their pocket. Now that's not a fair gesture. You want to keep your palms open. So what I do is I listen to the speech and I write down one part of that sentence, exactly what they said. And then I put a pointer saying hand in pocket. So when I go on stage, I say something like, you were telling us that you went to college and you met your friends and they greeted you all through with your hand in your pocket. Instead of saying it that way, Mr. Speaker, if you would have said, I went to college and I met my friends and they greeted me, that would have landed better. So write down a part of the sentence. That's the only way. Even when you're giving feedbacks about pause, right? Very important. Write the sentence. This is what you said, Mr. Speaker. I would have said, so for example, let's say somebody in their speech said, I went to the mall, I went into the shop, I bought something and then I came home. I'd write that down and then I'd go and say, if you would have said it instead like, I went into the mall, I looked out, went to the shop, picked what I could and then came back home. There are 3 pauses there and now you know how it changed. So write it down. But write only one.
Yeah.
If there are so many errors and gestures throughout the speech, don't take the pressure of writing everything. 1 or 2 at most is important. that should be.
And it's also fine to skip some of the feedback,
Of
like as
course,
you rightly said.
of course, because it's otherwise it gets too much, right? Yes, we got to take a judgment call. Yes,
I believe,
Soumya.
sound.
Yes.
I believe that as an evaluator, right, we have to educate ourselves. For example, tomorrow you're giving a speech about body language. I should be informed first what good body language is, what good gestures are. Otherwise, I'll not be able to add value to the speaker,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely, you're spot on, and that's what I said in the beginning of my speech. They don't walk into the room, take the evaluation sheet, and go, "Oh, speech with a purpose." Okay, I know. That's not a nice way to do it. If I'm the evaluator, I come from a club where we meet on Friday, and our agenda goes out on Tuesday. So as soon as the agenda goes out, and I see myself tagged to a particular speaker, we go back, check what project they are doing. I read it up, and if these are things I don't know, like say for example level 1, we mostly know. But when it comes to level 3, level 4 speeches, there would be things like managing a difficult audience. You would have managing a difficult audience in Toastmasters is a project where you dedicatedly have to keep people appointed to distract the speaker. I've walked into a lot of clubs where everybody is distracting the speaker. That's not how that project works, right? So we have to do some studying. There are things like lessons learned in the Toastmaster project. So I always go back, check what the evaluation is. You can read it up on the Toastmaster website. Of course, there are a lot of other resources out there that you can look up for, but it's always available in the Toastmaster website itself. You can go to your own pathway and read down the module of that. Always better. If you want to do justice to the speaker, it's very important that you know what they are attempting clearly. Even if you're telling them objective not met, you should be 100% be able to articulate why not. So yeah, absolutely. Soumya, can't agree more.
When can you advise speaker to repeat the project, or like what's the point?
Yeah, if the objective is not met, I would usually ask them to reattempt. Even for things like, say for example, the body language and voice modulation is two objectives, right? You've got to have body language and voice modulation. So let's say they partially met. There was voice modulation, but body language wasn't there at all. I generally would ask them to do a speech that would have body language. So if objective is not met, as per Toastmasters guidelines, we cannot absolutely tell anybody to repeat. It's their choice. You can advise them to repeat. Whether they want to or not is their choice. That's what the pathway guideline says. But if I ever feel that the objective was not met, I usually advise to repeat, because it's helpful for the speakers. They went through a particular project, they did not pick the skill that they were supposed to, and that's not fair. So that's how I position it, that this project was to help you gain this skill, but I feel like that's not fully gained. You bring a topic like this, I'll help you gain this skill and try to do it again. That's how I usually position it. Anything else?
So in such cases where
I'll come to you in a second. Yes, Shilpi.
in such cases where you would advise them to repeat it, and if they don't want to go about it, they can still go ahead and
They can still go ahead. That's what
That is
that is fine. That's what the Toastmasters guideline says. I usually inform the VPR as well that look, this is what I've advised the speaker. Now it's the speaker's choice. With some people would have done 2-3 pathways and then they don't care anymore. They just want to proceed. It's fine. That's their personal choice. But I inform the VPR so that when they register for the next speech slot, the VPR can say, look, last speech you were advised to do it. Do you want to repeat? And it's really, but directionally as a club, we try to we try not to position it like you did something wrong and you have to do it again. We rather try to position it as that this is helpful for you to do it, and we will help you pick that skill. Now you go ahead, and mostly people take it. So that's how I put it across. Yes.
Okay, so my question is with respect to taking notes. So one common problem I face is, like, let's say speaker started with a big bang, body language or a good voice modulation, and you make a note of it. You gave good body language or voice modulation, and then probably speech falls flat. If you are in my situation, how would you make a note or make a changes to it?
Yeah, that's a really nice point. It's quite true actually. This happens practically. For just in case somebody did. But what he said is, let's say in the opening the speaker had very nice voice modulation and body language, but didn't have any more of it throughout. That's what you meant, right? So there are two ways to approach it. If through the speech, let's say it goes like the opening had exceptional voice modulation and the rest of the speech it was just okay, then I won't bring the voice modulation point, which is just flat. But if it went flat, like there was no voice modulation at all, there are two ways to position it. One is I will definitely bring it in my AOI, and I'd start the AOI as, while in the opening you had a really nice voice modulation, your rest of your speech was monotonous, For example, when you said this line in the body of your speech, this is how you said and this is how you could. That's one way. And the second way to do it is you can put the opening as an highlight. Instead of putting it as a voice modulation body language point, you can put it as the opening, as the highlight. That, oh, I loved your opening. It had a lot of energy and a lot of body language. And then you put the voice modulation as an area of improvement. Then you totally focus on the rest of the speech without the opening. So there are two ways, depending on how many other highlights were there in the speech or how many other areas of improvement.
So you spoke about advising to repeat the project. So what about the disqualifications?
Time? You mean disqualified by time?
Yeah, so that's one. Other than that, are there no other disqualifications?
So, as per pathways guidelines, this is what it says, that there could be instances where the speaker did not meet the objective of the speech as per you, and you can advise the speaker to repeat, but you cannot force the speaker to repeat, because we don't, if you've noticed, I mean, I've heard this only from predecessors at club, but earlier when there was a CC manual, for example, people used to, every speech had to be approved by the VPA. That's not the case now. Our project speeches don't get approved, only the level completion gets approved. So that's why the project speech is the speaker's choice. But as a club, we practice a culture of asking people to repeat when they don't meet the objective. Time disqualification definitely can be asked to repeat if they overshoot time.
And in the contests, apart from time disqualification, are there other
Yes,
qualifications?
yes. In a contest, you're asking for evaluation or ISC? ISC, right?
ISC
Speech.
evaluation.
Yeah. So in a contest, in speech contest, there are three kinds of disqualification. One is time, if you overshot time. The second is on grounds of originality and reference. These are the two other grounds. When I say originality and reference, what it means, originality means, let's say, for example, all of us know Dhananjay Etiarachi, he was one of the world champions. You pick his exact speech and you deliver it at your club. So that is not original. It's not your story. You're telling somebody else's story. Now, originality is a very dicey thing. You could have had a similar incident to his, which you are telling in your own words. That's original. But if you're verbatim picking the speech in it, that's not fair. The other thing for an ISC disqualification is reference. For example, Soumya and I are contestants in an ISC contest. I heard Soumya's speech. She spoke before me. And I come on stage, I do my speech, and I go, as Soumya said in her speech, immediate disqualification. You cannot reference another person from the same contest in your speech. You can't do that for any contest for that matter. For evaluation, you don't get to see. So let's say Nikhil was the evaluator before me. I actually wouldn't have seen Nikhil's evaluation because I'm in a breakout room. But because I know Nikhil is an evaluator, even then if I come and say, like Nikhil always says, disqualification. That is not allowed. So you cannot reference originality. I'll just finish it. Last thing is eligibility, which is basically you participated at club. Your club contest happened in Feb. You were a paid member. Your area contest is in April. You didn't renew in March. You're disqualified. So these are the three categories for a speech contest disqualification. Applies to all contests. For ISC, there's an additional criteria. You should have completed level 2 of pathways. That's also a disqualification. Sorry, Shilpa.
But why is referencing a disqualification point? What is the reasoning?
Okay, so there are two reasonings. For ISC, it's a disqualification point because what would happen is, let's say Soumya, I'm going to just take so let's say Soumya did something and my speech is after her. So I've heard her speech. Now what I am doing is, maybe she did something really fun in her speech. I am using her content to generate humor in my content. That's not fair to her, right? If she came after me, she could have done that. So it means I have an unfair advantage that I am coming after her. So that unfair advantage is not, this wasn't, again, this is what I heard when I was doing the district finals. This was not one of the criteria, say about, I don't know, 10 years back. People used to do this and it was noticed that people are taking unfair advantage. That's why TI brought this rule. Yeah, I wouldn't know a lot of history, but that's what I've heard. But logically, yeah, that's the reason that you don't take unfair. Yes, ma'am.
Mandatory to follow sandwich approach.
Is it mandatory to follow sandwich approach? Okay. So, I guess the right way to put it, mandatory? No. You can follow your approach. I have seen some people do solid evaluations with a technique like this. They would come in, tell a highlight and tell a related AOI right after. And then go for another highlight and tell a related AOI. That's not sandwich. Sandwich is highlight, AOI, summary, right? So you could do that format also, where you're saying the highlight of your speech is also voice modulation, but the area of improvement is also the fact that emotions didn't have the right voice modulation. So you can do that technique. The two things you have to keep in mind if you're doing anything other than sandwich is first clarity. It should be clear whatever you're saying, that this is the highlight, this is the area of improvement, irrespective of your technique. And every evaluation needs to have a summary. So summary is the last bread in that sandwich, right? In our sandwich method, where we want to end on a high. So it always needs to have a summary, and something like wishing the speaker all the very best, looking forward to your future speeches is a great way. That's how we end things at work also. Your bonus this time is very less, but looking for a great year next year. So you could do the same thing. Prapan, I know you have a question, but Nick
Yeah,
is
sure.
here, which
Yeah.
means we have to wrap
Should we
up.
continue with the Q&A in the
Yeah.
break time?
Yes,
Yeah,
okay,
okay,
great.
awesome.
Thank you. Thank
So-
you for the opportunity. All the very best.
Thank you.